Welcome to another Railroads Online Showcase video. This time around, as you can tell, we are not on my regular safe anymore. Well, there isn't even too much going on in this area in general. It doesn't even have a freight depot in that direction, so yeah, this is actually a brand new safe, obviously, and it has edited industry positions. Made that all myself using Railroad Studio, and I just wanted to showcase this version of a map to you guys. That's mainly down to three different reasons. First up, I really need to take a bit of a break from that other save which I've been playing on for the last few months. Partially down to that issue at the oilfield platform, which I hope will be fixed before we get to that in this version of the map. But also the industry placements of some of the late game stuff over there was a bit annoying. However, I'm not going to just abandon that. I'm definitely planning on getting back to that save, but I think in the meantime it's better for me to just do something else and have a bit of a fresh start again. Enjoy the early game, hopefully incorporate the coal engines a bit more than in the last save. But we are going to see about that, and yes, I'm definitely going to be making videos on this version of the save as well. The second thing is that I took about a week in order to get all of the industry positions mainly finalized. There are a few things that I'm not completely set on yet, and having a bit of a discussion about this and just telling you guys about my thought process and also the things that are still on the table. I just wanted to do that and hopefully also get a few opinions of you guys along the way if you have anything to tell about what you think about the stuff, and that's going to happen towards the end of this video. And thirdly, I'm also considering to make this available for download, just if anybody wants to have a go at this version of the map. However, I'm only going to do so if there is any interest in that. So if you want a download link, please let me know. I will then make a follow-up video giving you that link and also talking about how to quote-unquote install the thing. It's really just putting it into the right save folder, but well, we'll get to that. For this video, however, my plans are to first go through all of the different industries in order and just give you guys the general overview of where they are on the map. Secondly, going through some of the things that I didn't like too much about the original placement, and then thirdly going through everything again, having a bit of a discussion and getting into depth with where I put all the, or why I put all the industries in place, all the things that I was considering with alternative positions, and maybe some other things that are still not completely set in stone yet. So, starting out with the starting area over here, it's still in its original position, and that's down to this not being able to be moved. It's kinda hard-coded on the map, in the center of it. Another thing that cannot be edited as far as I'm aware is the text on this map. Would really love to have everything in its appropriate new place at the different industries, but I don't think that can be moved around. If you know better, please let me know. Otherwise, well, I at least made sure to have a teleport post with every other industry, so it should be easy enough to figure out where they all are. So let's now all go towards the logging camp, which is all the way up north over here. This is on a little ledge, just a plateau above the smelter valley. Or I mean the valley where the smelter would originally be on the default map. When I'm talking about places like that, I always mean the original placement of it. So yeah, this is in a rather spacious area. At least to the south there is a lot of space to extend into. The other areas may be a bit more difficult, but yeah. This is just its general placement, and I'm going to be talking more about this once we get into the discussion bit. Going to the sawmill, it is basically at its original location, at least in the general area. I rotated it around by about 90 degrees, still just around the original lake it's been on. And yeah, it comes with its own foundation that is sadly part of the map and not the building, so this cannot be moved around, and I made sure to have a bit of a decoration, thus fencing it off, so it looks at least a little bit less like an accident and more like something purposeful. Like either some open storage area, or maybe the foundation for another building which has just been fenced off for construction or something like that. Of course, this can all be removed because this is just sunk into the ground bridges. And I also included a bridge going across the river or across the little lake over here. Just to have something to connect the platform to. Also, this entire thing, like every other industry that I placed down, is put into a rotation grid of either 10-degree increments, so 0, 10, 20, 50, 90, 180, whatever, or at least 5-degree increments, depending on if there was an industry that had a bit of a more fiddly placement. Just so it should be easy enough to figure out a decent rotation for the track to be perfectly in parallel with the platform. So going from the sawmill to the iron ore mine, which would be the next one in line, this actually hasn't been edited. Overall it's still in the same location. And yeah, that was because I like the original location of that. Doesn't mean that I don't necessarily like the original location of some of the other stuff, but a lot of things have been changed just for variety. However, I figured with this one, it would be nice to just keep it where it is. After that, we would go to the smelter. And this is now down in the valley below the ledge of the original iron mine location. Just a very spacious area with a river flowing by over here. And this is another space where you can place down a large station around this. Should give you much more space than the original version, so that should all be good. And yeah, after the smelter we will go up to the coal mine, or the ton ore mine, whatever. This one has been placed at the most treacherous position, because of reasons that I'll get into later. Again, I'm trying to keep myself from spoiling too much. Just want to showcase it right now and not get into the discussion, but yeah, from this point on, the iron ore mine is down at that location in the center of the map, or in the center of the screen right now. And yeah, this is very far up. After that, let's go to the ironworks. This is down pretty close to where it used to be, just slightly north of the refinery plateau. And yeah, should be easy enough to reach, another area with a lot of space. And for that we'll go to the oil field, which is all the way up north again, at the very bottom of the smelter valley. So if the smelter was still in its original place, it would be over there. And these industries would be neighbors. After that, the final regular industry is the refinery, which we have over here on the plateau where the coal mine used to be. God damn it. Used to be over there. There should be enough space to make a rather decent station as well. But again, another one that's a bit more difficult to reach. And lastly, but not leastly, we have a freight depot. I always have a bit of trouble getting out of telegraph post, so please bear with me. It's just been put into a bit of a more remote location instead of the center of the map here. So yeah, that's all the different industries placements as of now. I'm considering to have at least maybe another logging camp somewhere, but we'll talk about that more in a moment. First up, let's go back to the center of the map, our starting area, and get into the things that I didn't like too much about the original placement. So first up, the freight depot. While it is very important that this is accessible from any stage of the game, I think just having it in the center of the map and so easy to make a just pass-through line, kind of like a McDonald's where you just drive through, order your stuff and get out again without leaving the car. It's a bit silly and too easy for something that's so important. So I wanted people to at least work for this, and that's why I moved it over there. The exact placement is something that I'm going to discuss a bit later on, but yeah, but it needs to be easily enough accessible from the sawmill and everything, just to make a bit more money in the early game and also at any other stage. It shouldn't be so easy that you can just drive past it and it's so easy to get from every place. The next thing, and that's really the most egregious issue I was facing with the original placement of the industries, are these three down here: oil field, ironworks and refinery. Generally speaking, I would call this entire area with the logging camp, sawmill, freight depot, oil field and ironworks plus the refinery to be more the beginner area. Because thus everything is on an almost even playing field, so easy to reach. Yeah, for the last three you need to add down a bit more track, but overall there is no real challenge in getting to any of these. And especially the last three being placed down so close to each other and also needing stuff from each other, it's so weird and awkward. Like, I tried to make another station down here between the ironworks and the oil field, and I tried to make it a bit longer, so I needed to go past the oil field first and come back to it because there was just not even enough space for that in between. So editing these was definitely one of my main priorities, just so that they are far more apart and you need to do more traveling in order to get from one to the other. The last thing that I wasn't happy about is the original placement of a coal mine. I think this area down here is great, it's very important, that's why I even placed down two industries over here. But the coal mine itself, well, it means a lot of effort getting from the smelter down all the way here and then most likely over the back of a mountain over here in order to reach the ironworks. That's a nice challenge and all, but you don't really need to build it up that well because the coal mine is something that you are barely going to use. Of course, there are coal-driven engines which at this point in time don't really need much coal, so just the stuff that you have on the tender, there's so much coal to shovel up from there that you will barely ever going to need to refuel it. And the ironworks itself also doesn't have much coal consumption, so all the effort you put into making a track to get down here and get everything delivered is kind of a waste because you barely will ever need to use it again after getting a base supply of coal. And yeah, that's the main issues I had. The other stuff that I did here with industry placement is more down to me having played on the original version of the map so much that I wanted to have things in different positions just for the sake of variety. Doesn't mean that anything is wrong with them, but I just wanted to have a bit more variation in order to have a different playing experience. But yeah, let's now go through all of the different industries again and get into why I placed them where they are right now. Again, this not being movable is something that kinda hindered me in a few places because I would have placed this down in a very different location and have everything from the starting area more located over here to the northeast, east of the map, and yeah, that just didn't work out because having then to connect this thing to just the very northeast of the map in order to even get started, that was something that I was not too happy about. However, another upside of this being edited, with a freight depot gone, I think there is far more of an option to really make a large station over here without that being in the way. So can really go ham on this area and fully incorporate the starting area for getting the new trains and everything into the actual design of the station. Apart from, of course, needing to be careful about this track still being in the way. But that being said, let's now go to the logging camp, which has been placed here mostly because I always knew I would be placing the smelter in a different location, and it requiring so much cordwood, I wanted to have something that was, well, it ended up not being that close by, but I think just those two being on a more level playing field, you can now really invest into getting an amazingly long cordwood train and get it all the way down here and just make mass deliveries of the stuff in order to keep smelting up the iron. If the logging camp was placed on the east side, or the west side of the map, I mean, that would be way too long, but I think just going across half a map with a cordwood train, that should be working out quite well. I'm definitely considering on adding another logging camp somewhere in this direction, maybe just in the old place of the oil field. That area is flat and very spacious, so it would be very easy to build all kinds of different stations you desire in that space. I think another upside of that would be that despite there not being much of a height difference between the sawmill and the logging camp as of right now, still due to the terrain in the middle it's a bit harder to reach this one, and just to start out with I think it would be easier to just get some loss between the sawmill and this location. Also this would put it in between the freight depot and the sawmill, so would be easy enough to just get some logs up here, filling up some stake cars, getting them down with the empty log cars, and then potentially filling up the log cars again to then deliver everything to here, and then going back and doing all that kind of stuff over and over again, because I already played a bit on this map and noticed that getting enough money to buy additional stuff is a bit more tough with the logging camp being placed up here, so I guess the second one over here would work nicely towards that. Which again, once you build up a larger station somewhere in this general area, this would also be very nice to have in order to fill up your station with firewood and that kind of stuff. So yeah, likely going to be adding that, and yeah, I already have a save on this map. Will not be too difficult to add this anyways, and also do a few other things that I was planning on changing, or at least considering. But yeah, this is likely going to be happening. So yeah, gonna be looking out for that. So that's so much about the logging camp. The sawmill itself, this is something that I highly considered on switching around with its location. The thing is, I don't want to make this look like a janky, buggy mess or something. And this is really the biggest body of water on the entire map, and it doesn't move around alongside the logging camp itself. So I wanted to have something where you can still put down all the logs and it doesn't look like we are glitching into the into the grass over here or something. So this is really the only place that can accommodate all the logs at once. Otherwise, some of the stuff would likely go into the river banks or even below ground or something. And yeah, that means that it kind of needed to stay here. The reason why I switched around the rotation is just because this is one of the most important industries in the game, since it connects to almost every other one in the game. And therefore I didn't want to just have the exact same thing happening here as on the last save. Been dealing with that on there for quite a while, and I wanted to have a bit of variety. That's why I try to do it here. Should open up a few options for different kinds of stations. And that's exactly what I'm all about with this one. So, after this, the iron ore mine, not too much to talk about here. I just think that if there's anything that really doesn't need to be moved around because it already is in its perfect location, it has to be the iron mine. This is just the right amount of elevation from the other stuff to make it a bit more challenging and getting up here, but also just coming around the corners when you're building the track and going up here the first time with the train. Just seeing the plateau and the iron mine towering on it, it's just kind of perfect in its own way. For variety's reason, it would be nice to have it somewhere else with maybe a bit more space around to build up a bigger station, but I think this is just perfect for its location on the map and its point in the progression through all the different industries for it being right where it is over here. Only means that likely the connection between the sawmill and the iron ore mine is going to be pretty much the same as on the original one. However, that cannot be said for going from the iron ore mine to the smelter down here. And no, this doesn't mean that you will have to go across the back of a mountain over here, although that would be a very short, short connection. And you don't need to go all the way down and cross along here to go back up. There's actually a different kind of way, which means that you would then just go from here on a level track, maybe going up slightly at some point, maybe 0.5 degrees to this point, crossing over and then going back down, and I'm really looking forward to building out this kind of track. Just so you know, this is a version that can be done and I'm looking forward to doing so. Of course, the other options would also be viable. But yeah, let's now go from the iron mine over to the smelter down in the valley here. Well, I wanted to have something where it has a bit more space and can therefore hopefully accommodate a bit more of what's it called again, the cordwood and all that. Had a few restrictions here and there with the other safe, and just for variety's sake again, wanted to have this in a different place, but also with how some of the stuff incorporates. I always knew that I wanted to have one industry down in the valley over here and another one on the ledge where the coal mine used to be. And ideally, these should be two industries that don't have any stuff that you need to get from one to the other, just so that they are maybe close by neighbors, but you don't feel awkward for having to just cut a few things from one place to the other while it being a stupidly short travel time. The thing that I'm considering with this one is maybe turning the entire thing around by 180 degrees and just maybe putting it a bit further in this direction, just so you have a bit more of a challenge getting the cordwood set up decently. So you would need to utilize the backside of this, so going further down to the east in order to deal with the cordwood. Not completely decided on that yet, but this valley is definitely spacious enough to get a decently sized station in here. Also, again, the refinery on top means that you will have a bit of, well, you will need to put a bit of thought into how you want to connect these two. Of course, it's an option to just have one track going up from, coming down from here, just going to the smelter, just staying at the bottom of the valley, and having another one that goes up and around to the coal mine. Not the coal mine, the refinery, I mean. But there's also the option to only connect to one and then have a track in between, which could either be maybe a lengthy track that has a bit of an incline, or maybe a very short and steep track where you would maybe use just some of the gear tracks in order to connect in between the two. So just having a really just one specific inter-industry connection to deal with stuff that comes in but is meant for the upstairs neighbor. That could all be interesting and should open up a lot of options in order to maybe even deliver in bulk to both of these, and also just figure out a lot of different things for all the stuff. Now let's go to the coal mine, which is actually the first industry that I put in its location, knowing that I wanted to have something really challenging with it. I already talked about how it doesn't have much of a use in this game because you are going to need not too much coal, so you are going to be using this rarely. Therefore, I think having this as a challenge to get up to, but then something that doesn't necessarily require perfection in order to just really build out perfectly, as you're not going to need this all the time, is gonna be quite fun. And yeah, this is something where I'm definitely going to be using just gear trains instead of going up here with a regular train. Could be possible, but would likely look a lot more janky and need maybe an entire loop around the complete map in order to make it up here. But yeah, just a steep mountain track that could go down all the kinds of different ways with likely a base station at the bottom. And that could all be connected to either the iron ore mine over here, since it's already at a bit of an elevation. It could come down to the coal mine valley, where you would then connect to the smelter, which of course delivers the rails for the coal mine. You could also put it down over here, because you need to deliver the coal down to the iron works. But you also need the beams from over here, so this can connect to all kinds of places, maybe even having multiple base stations with a complete setup or something. So this is something to really figure out and get in depth with. I don't know what I'm going to do here, but definitely base station at the bottom, getting the road train into there, and then disconnecting the entire train and only coming up here with as much as I can carry at a time. With this likely only being a pass-through line to some degree, then someone needing a stopper over there and then coming back around and slowly descending again. Should be fun, will definitely be different to the original map, where basically each and every one of the stations can be reached by just the road train if you build up the entire thing well enough. Which should be a much harsher challenge in that way. So, the ironworks is just something that I needed to put here for making everything balanced in terms of where everything is and how I want it to connect. Originally I even had it where the smelter is right now, but that didn't turn out too well. Also, should maybe mention for the smelter, another thing I was considering was first up having it up here on the valley, so getting over here with the iron hopper cars and then coming around here would have been a bit shorter. Also the connection to this thing, although getting from the logging camp up here would be a bit of an incline. But this entire area turned out to be, while it's flat, it's not even. It's at a very slight slope, and that made the entire thing a bit of a nightmare. Also just putting it here next to the refinery worked out quite well, because having the ironworks next to the refinery meant that you needed to get some stuff from the ironworks up here, and that was not something that I was about. So yeah, this means that you will now need to especially have a bit more of a travel time with the boxcars, as well as the pipes, so makes more sense in order to figure out some things and get a longer train up to maybe another helper station over here or something. Gonna make up your mind how you're going to transport everything, and it gives you a lot more options and hopefully a lot more intrigue on how everything can be dealt with over here. Yeah, I was considering putting it next to the refinery, but again decided against it finally. Also for the smelter, another thing that I almost forgot to mention, I was considering of having 2 smelters and just blocking off one of these platforms so that you could only get raw iron from one of the smelters and only get some rails from the other one. That would, however, require me to basically put this part of the platform into the side of a mountain. Couldn't figure out a nice way to do it, and also it would have been kinda annoying to deal with at some point. Also considered to do the same for the logging camp, just so that down here at the oil field you maybe could only get the logs, and up here you could maybe only get the cordwood, but then again that doesn't really serve any purpose. Overall, I think having 2 logging camps, it will be pretty clear which stuff you want to use where, and even if you decide to maybe get the logs from this one instead of this one, that's up to you. You don't need to play the way that I maybe intend to do myself, so gonna leave a few options here and there. But yeah, that was something that was going through my head, but I couldn't make it work and decided to then just leave it as is. The ironworks, again, mostly about how long do I want the travel times to be, and I decided I wanted to have something rather lengthy. Of course, for getting stuff to the coal mine, you could theoretically, oh no, not the coal mine, goddammit, the refinery. I just read this off, and it's, yeah, it's not the coal mine, it's the refinery over here. Getting stuff from here to there would also be possible, but I don't think it's necessarily the best choice of action. Can just make a really long train, have it go through here, disconnect the part that should go to the smelter to supply that, and then come down with the rest in order to deliver to the refinery. I was about to say coal mine again. So yeah, that would be an option. Maybe on the way back you take the cars that can get the logs as well in order to deliver some over here. That would be possible, but that's all up to you. So I think there are a few options here and there to use some stuff in multiple ways. Now let's finally go to the oil field. The reason why this is at the bottom of this valley, and this is something that I decided on very early on, the oil tank cars are some of the most heavy ones, or the heaviest ones in the game. So for the second to last industry, I wanted to have the challenge for people to carry as much of the stuff out of this valley as possible. But it's not gonna be easy, because these weigh very much more than just the regular old stake cars or something. So this is gonna be tough, and I think it should be tough because this is the second to last industry, as I mentioned. And yeah, it should not be a cakewalk. Of course, you can cheese it by making an extremely long track, maybe wrapping around the entire thing here twice in order to have barely any incline. But that's up for you to figure out. Maybe again, another one of those cases where you're going to need a gear train in order to just carry stuff from down here up to the logging camp and then put it onto a road engine. But, well, that's something to figure out. I just wanted this to be more of a challenge, and then, of course, there's also going to be a bit of travel time to get to the coal mine. At which point, again, you are going to need to get those cars further up. Did I say coal mine again? I mean, of course, refinery. Speaking of the refinery, the one reason why it's up here is because it fits like a glove. Initially, I also considered switching this around with smelter down there. However, the smelter doesn't fit. It's a bit of a thick boy, way too wide in order to fit in here, at least to fit in nicely. So I decided to put back the refinery, and the only reason why I wouldn't like it up here is because it's already at an elevation, and that makes it way easier to go over the back of a mountain in that direction and way further down to the freight depot. But I guess this is what it is, and those cars shouldn't be all that heavy anyways, at least not as heavy as the tank cars, so I think that's all good. Should be fun making something up here, and again, I already explained most of the stuff when I talked about the position down there. So this should all be nice. And last but not least, let's talk about why I placed the freight depot over here. I think most of it has been explained already. I just wanted it a bit more of a, not necessarily a challenge, but a bit more work to deliver stuff to here, because this is just very important and shouldn't just be handed over to people that easily. And the placement of this reflects this as well, because as it is right now, you can't really make much of a drive-through train that just passes by and has you unload the entire thing while it's rolling through. You could theoretically do this on the backside, I guess, just by coming in through here and then going around the entire thing and coming back the other direction. But that's something that anybody would have to decide on their own. I was considering to put it a bit further back, but I think for people who really just want the convenience over here, they can do that. If anybody wants to ignore this side of the platform and just build up a proper station, just how I want to do it, then they can do so without it looking like they are missing out on the very obvious other way of handling things. Looks a bit more like it's intended this way, and yeah, I just decided against blocking off that backside completely to mess with people and force them to do this. If anybody wants to play it like that and have a drive-through, why not? Doesn't mean that I'm going to. But yeah, that's all the stuff that I put down here, all the different placements. Again, to summarize, the two things that I'm considering is first up adding another logging camp over here. Just as another supply for the sawmill that's easier to reach just from the starting point. And also switching around the smelter, I mean, not the sawmill. God damn it. Just by 180 degrees so that you would maybe need a bit more of the backside in order to make especially the cordwood deliveries happen. But that's all up for consideration, something that I'm going to figure out afterwards. Maybe with the help of you guys. If you have any opinions on that, please let me know. But yeah, this is it for this map. Again, if you want this available for download, please let me know as well. And gonna see you when I start this series proper. Gonna admit I already recorded the first episode of that, but I didn't have the time to make this video because I knew this was gonna be a long one, so I just wanted to start playing on that, so I made that one first and then did this afterwards. So I already knew a few of the things that happen over there. But yeah, gonna find out in a few days once I upload that video. So thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.